Hi, this is Bethany Brown, and today we're going to talk about Emotions 101. This topic is a true passion of mine. My wish for you is to feel my passion and to take a wealth of knowledge home with you to really affect your body, your mind, and your spirit. So without further ado, let's begin. This is a staggering statistic, but 75% to 98% of all mental, physical, and behavioral illnesses begin right here from our thought life, from our emotions. Our bodies were created to work absolutely perfectly. But it's when we introduce stress to our bodies that it's forced to adapt. And these adaptations are prone to manifest as symptoms. And symptoms get grouped together to make a diagnosis in the medical community. All symptoms are created from stress. Every single symptom that manifests in your body is created from stress, either chemical, physical, or emotional stress to our body. So today we're going to focus on the emotional stress that we place on our bodies and how that manifests. Our bodies do not know the difference between good stress and bad stress. What is different is how we interpret the stress through our thoughts. So our thoughts become beliefs, our beliefs become actions, and our actions become reality. So what we're doing is when we have a thought, we consciously decide how we are going to act on that thought. And every time we make a decision, we're making a groove in our cellular memory, in our brains, that becomes a path that it's very hard for us to detract from. And these are physical grooves in our brain that you can see with imagery. So every single time we react, we're just deepening that groove to where it becomes almost 100% how our brain has to react to a certain situation. All emotions have to be stored somewhere when they come in your body. Emotions are energy, and energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So when an emotion enters our body, it's stored somewhere by design. And if it's a negative emotion, that can have negative consequences on our body. So like I said before, and this is a statistic from cognitive neuroscientist Dr. Caroline Leaf, 75 to 98% of all mental, physical, and behavioral illnesses come from one's thoughts life. So the question at this point is, what can we do about it? But we can reset. So thankfully, the outdated belief that our brains are rigid, meaning that one spot in our brain had one function, and if that part of our brain was like destroyed in any way, that function was gone forever. Thankfully, that belief is outdated, and the new belief that our brains are plastic or malleable, meaning that one part of our brain can make up for another part of our brain that has lost its ability to control a certain part of our body. This is the science of neuroplasticity. So this is very good news to us, but what does it mean to us? What this means is that through our thoughts, we can be our own microsurgeons and make choices that will physically change the circuits in our brain. So those paths I was talking about, those paths that we've created deep grooves that become learned behavior, we can reroute those paths through practice, and the old path will fade away and the new path will become our new true path. This takes practice. It takes 62 days to change a neurological pathway in our brain, but it's so worth it. Remember this, because this is going to come up later and it's going to be very important. But our brains do not know the difference between what somebody else is saying and what we are saying. And our brains do not know the difference between a truth and a lie. So that saying that we are who we hang out with is so true. Because if you are hanging out with negative people that just speak negativity, your brain doesn't know that you're not speaking negativity, and your brain doesn't know that that is not your truth. So you are who you hang out with, and you have to train your brain to think positively, to have a positive outlook. And this is, you have to be very intentional with what you are saying to yourself and to others, especially your kids. The limbic lobe of our brains is where all emotions are processed. So it's the emotional control center. And our sense of smell is the only sense we have that communicates with this lobe of our brain. So the only way to access the emotional control centers of our brain is through our sense of smell. And this is a unique system where when the limbic lobe of our brain is stimulated and we smell something, we have an emotional response first and then a physical response. For every other part of our brain, in every other sense, we have a physical response first, followed by an emotional response. So the only way to release stored trauma and release emotions is through stimulating the limbic lobe of the brain and via sense. Being that our sense of smell is the only way to access the emotional centers of our brain, essential oils play a critical role in releasing emotional trauma. This is not a class in how essential oils work, but I am going to talk about frequency. Every single living thing has its own vibrational frequency. Every tree, every plant, every organ in our body, every cell in our body has a different vibrational frequency that can be measured with equipment. And every single essential oil also has its own vibrational frequency. So when we introduce these essential oils into our body, one of the things they do, one of the many things they do, is seek out that part of the body that has a like frequency, and they join together in a phenomenon called harmonics or synergy, and together it makes the frequency rise. And the higher our frequency, the happier and better off we are. Another thing it does is just raise the overall frequency of our body altogether, which is not a bad thing. A lot of you are probably wondering, as was I, how they choose a particular name for a particular bottle of oil. Because a bottle of oil cannot bring us joy. A bottle of oil cannot help us forgive somebody. A bottle of oil cannot bring us success with friendships. But there is a specific reason why they are named the way they are. So bringing it back to frequency, all emotions have a mean frequency also. So when the bottle, joy for example, is a blend, when creating the blend of joy, they created it in the lab, and with all of the oils that are mixed together to make the blend joy, they match the frequency of the average person experiencing joy. So that's one way it works. But the main thing and the most fascinating thing is called therapy localization. So our bodies cannot concentrate, our brain cannot concentrate on every single thing at one time, or we get overwhelmed. That's why when I touch right here on my wrist, there's an increase of blood flow here. I'm telling my brain, this is where I want to concentrate. So all of a sudden, your brain is turned on here. What's going on here? Is there an injury? Is this a touch of love? What is this? And that's why sometimes we don't realize our shoulder hurts until we touch it, and then all of a sudden we're thinking about that part and we're hyper focused on it, and all of a sudden we realize it hurts. So this is all physical, but it also happens when we are thinking about emotions. So what happens with therapy localization is it brings that thought to the forefront of our brains. So as we take the bottle joy, or forgiveness is a good example. We take the bottle forgiveness, as we're smelling the oil, as we're reading the label that says forgiveness, it brings the thought of forgiveness and whom we need to forgive to the forefront of our brains. So that is what we can work on. It just brings it to the forefront of our brains so we have a chance to work on it. And another fascinating thing that I didn't know for a very, very long time is the bottle colors, like the label colors, have meaning too. And it's all color coded for color therapy. So good examples of this are the ULA oils. ULA Fitness is red because red creates action. ULA Field and ULA Finance, green is a color for finances, and the color of the label is green. So it's all just about subconsciously speaking to our minds so that we have the best chance of working through what we're trying to work through. Since smell is the key to accessing the emotional part of the brain, sense or fragrance is the key to accessing, processing, and releasing emotional trauma and just stored emotions. It releases our body from the consequences of storing negative emotions. Because of the chemical constituents in essential oils, which is part of an Essential Oils 101 class, they clear the path and they clear the cellular memory so that we have the opportunity to choose to go the other way, to create a blank slate. Every emotion has two sides. For example, the other side or opposite of anger is laughter. When we are angry, we can't physically truly laugh. And when we're truly laughing, we can't physically be angry. They are opposites and they cannot exist together. So what we need to do is anoint, smell, and consciously choose the other path. You have to speak it out loud. Remember that your brain does not know the difference between the truth and a lie. So always speak life into our bodies. The changes are not immediate, but if you're persistent, they're gradual. Persistence is key. You're paving a new pathway in your brain and letting the other one atrophy. So if you're not persistent, you're not paving a new path and you're just continuing down that old path and maybe paving them exactly the same way. So remember, it takes 62 days to change a neurological pathway in our brains. The best place to start is with the oils we already have. And the oils most of us already have are the ones in our premium starter kit. And just with the oils and the premium starter kit, we can clear at least 34 emotions. The hardest part in the beginning is going to be dissecting your emotions. So this is where you need to be really honest with yourself. And the first thing you may identify is, I'm angry. But you need to identify, why am I angry? Identify, I'm sad, but why am I sad? Etc. So you really have to dissect the emotions you're feeling and get down to the core of what is causing those emotions. So right now I'm going to teach you how to use the book we commonly reference for releasing emotional patterns using essential oils by Carolyn Mine. It's probably backwards. There are 5 different charts in this book. I'm going to start by teaching you how to use the emotional reference chart. So most of you have this book in front of you. The emotional reference chart starts on page 35. And I'm going to teach you how to read this chart. All of the emotions on this chart are listed alphabetically. So this is just page 1. What you do is you find the emotion you're feeling in column 1, the emotion, and identify it out loud. You want to be conscious about wanting to change and wanting to change the pathway. Then you identify the other side of the emotion. For example, the anger and laughter, so the opposite. This is a column of opposites. You need to change your perspective to see the situation from a different point of view. Then you vocalize the way out. This is you being intentional and speaking out loud, because our words are powerful, the way that you get out of this rut that you're in. I like to turn the way out into a vocalized prayer. I'm speaking truth into my body and bringing God in on the deal. Then we apply the oil that's listed to the alarm point, which has another chart, and you smell the oil. So it seems very simple, but it does take practice. So for example, we'll look at addiction. Addiction, the other side is freedom. The way out is I am wanted and lovable. The oil that will help you release this is peace and calming, that you apply to the brain alarm point, which you can find where the brain alarm point is on these charts, because they're not always straightforward. Sometimes the brain alarm point isn't even on your head. It's kind of weird. So what you're going to do, addiction. This means you feel you have an addiction to something, or you have a fear of being addicted. So all of the emotions on this chart are negative feelings, or the fear of not experiencing the positive feeling. So you want to say out loud, I feel addicted to X, Y, Z. You want to say it out loud. You want to choose consciously the opposite of addiction, which is freedom. I am not addicted. I am free. And notice I didn't say, I do not want to be addicted. I want to feel free. Claim it as yours already. Claim it, and your brain is claiming it. You want to vocalize your way out. Give your brain something new to believe. I am wanted and I am lovable. Then apply peace and calming to the brain alarm point and inhale while you're vocalizing. There are a couple of things I'd like to note. When you are releasing emotions, sometimes it can be uncomfortable. Say, for example, you're releasing anger. One of the ways some people release anger is through anger. So you want this to be a comfortable process for yourself and those around you. If the emotion you're releasing is not pleasant, start by applying right before bedtime and doing this right before bedtime, and release while you're sleeping, and nobody's worse for the wear. And as soon as you feel good during the day, so continue to release at night, and as soon as you feel good during the day, then try to do your emotional release during the day. These emotional pathways were not created overnight, and they're not going to be rerouted overnight. Typical application frequencies are 1, 3, 7, 10, and 18 times per day for 1, 3, or 7 weeks. Apply as often as every 15 minutes. If you feel a little better after oiling, keep going. And another key is to oil preventatively. So if you know you're going to go into a situation that sets you off in one way or another, preventatively oil, which raises your frequency. And when you're bombarded with those emotions that you knew were coming, it's not going to lower your frequency as low as if you hadn't prepared. The next chart is the oil reference chart, which starts on page 60. So the first column has the oils listed alphabetically. Maybe you scanned for an oil on one of the Zyto scanners or the Itovis, or maybe you're drawn to one of these oils for one reason or another. And the second column is the emotion that they release, and the third column is the alarm point. So this is a good chart when you're starting with the oil. Why this oil instead of why this emotion? So you would find the emotion you're dealing with, or find the oil you're dealing with, and notice how it says abundance, 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 abundance. There are multiple emotions that the oil of abundance will deal with. So just read through the emotions, see if any of them kind of ring a bell. And if none of them do, kind of just oil all of the alarm points until something makes sense. You'll feel better eventually. The next chart is the body reference chart, which is page 70. And this ties into the emotions attaching to certain parts of our body. So when you find there are different alarm points or different parts of the body, then the oil, and then the emotion. So if you find you're experiencing discomfort on one of these alarm points, it may be the emotion you're dealing with. Because remember, up to 98% of physical discomfort is caused by stored emotions and our thoughts. So if your adrenals are hurting, or your arteries are suffering, or your appendix is suffering, it most likely has an emotional culprit. So you identify the applicable emotion that goes with it, and then you go back to your emotion chart and start over from there. Find your other side, say your way out, etc. And then the next chart is the location of body alarm points chart. So this is where you're like, okay, where is the brain point? This starts on page 81. And it starts with an alphabetical listing of what chart to look for. So here's the alarm point. It verbally explains where it is on your body and tells you which chart to look at. And the charts all start after this index. So it'll show you precisely, chart A is on the head. It'll show you precisely where on the body these points are. When you have an alarm point that's hard to access, or you're in public and you can't access it because it's inappropriate, you can use the alternative points, which are later in the book, on the hands or the feet. And sometimes maybe one of the alarm points is on a leg or an arm and you have an amputee. You can use the points on an opposite leg or a foot. There's alternate points that you can use. You should all have a handout with the different essential oils that come in your starter kit. And right now I want to go over some of the emotions that can be cleared from the starter kit. So if you go to your oils reference chart, which starts on page 60, I'm going to go over each oil individually and what emotion can be cleared and kind of explain it a little bit to you. The first one I want to talk about is copaiba. The two emotions associated with copaiba are lies and not getting enough. So lies is you physically telling lies. If that's something you have an issue with, copaiba might help. Not getting enough means you're pouring into a relationship without enough return, or it's the perception. Digest is the next one. The emotion is disillusioned. This means you're in a relationship and seeing things that really are not there, or you're seeing things that really are not there in a situation and it's causing emotional stress. Frankincense has three emotions: dizziness or vertigo, feelings of worthlessness, and F you. Dizziness or vertigo can be physical and emotional dizziness. Feelings of worthlessness it's a core emotion that a lot of us deal with. And FU is that feeling you have where you're like, that's it, I'm done, I physically can't do anything more in this relationship. Lavender are the emotions abandonment, criticism, and the fear of unfoldment. Abandonment is feeling abandoned, even if it's not true. Criticism is you have a critical spirit, or you criticize often. Not you're feeling criticized, but you have a critical spirit. The fear of unfoldment is seeing what's coming down the pipeline in a relationship and not liking what's coming and almost being in denial about it or having a fear of what's coming. Lemon has quite a bit of emotions. All your citruses are really core emotional essential oils. So being left behind, entitlement, the fear of detachment, feelings of emptiness, frustration, life being unreliable, sadness, and stuck. Stuck is when you just don't know where to start, so you just don't even move. Panaway is exhaustion, the fear of emotions, and pain. So exhaustion is emotional exhaustion. Your fear of emotions, this is something, not to stereotype, that a lot of men struggle with, and they have the fear of even expressing their emotions, and they bottle them up inside, and it manifests in so many different horrible ways. Pain is emotional pain. Peppermint is failure, fear of dependence, restriction, which means you are restrictive in a relationship, kind of bossy pants, and rigidity, which is you are stuck in your ways. Purification is anger, a big one, but you need to remember that anger is just the first layer of the onion. Why are you angry is the question you should ask yourself. Another emotion with purification is being alone. The fear of rejection, the fear of seeing, which means you're afraid of what's happening. Negative erroneous thoughts. Recognition, this means you feel like you always need to be recognized. And violence, which is physical violence. RC is depletion, which means you are emotionally depleted. This is probably an oil a lot of us mothers could deal with. And last but not least, thieves. Thieves is sneaky and uncertain. So sneaky is probably one a lot of our children deal with. It's hiding what you're doing. So if you know you have a sneaky spirit, or one of your kids have a sneaky spirit, thieves is a good one for that. I'm going to wrap it up by answering some questions that frequently arise from a class like this. Sometimes it's hard for us to identify the negative emotion we're feeling, so really pay attention to the other side, and it's the positive side of the emotion. So look at that chart and try to find the emotion that, ooh, I want to feel that. That's what I want. And that can be a good indication of the negative emotion you're experiencing. You also don't have to use the alarm points. You can use your sense of smell and speak the emotion you want to experience. If you have no sense of smell, the pathways in your brain are still fired and influenced, so it's still going to work. Different emotions may be addressed at the exact same time. If more than one oil is needed, so you're using different oils for different emotions, just layer one on top of the other. And this one's kind of fun. You don't have to be a willing participant to benefit from emotional clearing. So you can identify the emotion of a loved one, the emotion a loved one is feeling, and diffuse or anoint with that oil. The oils will get into the brain no matter how much they want it to or not. It's going in there and it's going to make changes. Thank you so much for sticking with me, and I really hope you were blessed by this class. Please let me know if you have any questions, and have a blessed day.